Hi, Floppycatters. We are back today with Julie Lee of Adored Beast about Apothecary. Julie, thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome.
So today, Julie's going to talk about allergies and cats. And I'm so grateful for you and everything that you've done. I actually just talked to a friend of mine who started her cat on Feline Soothe and is doing so well. And for me, it was a miracle product. And so I want to thank you again for it because I mean, it just saved my life so many years, or not so many years, about 18 months ago. And now we're in such a better place. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that it helped is because my cat Charlie had pretty bad allergies. I don't know if I'd call it allergies or flea. It was more of like a sensitivity to foods or environmental things. So when someone comes in and says, or when you had your clinic, when someone would come in and say, "Hey, I think my cat has allergies," where would you start?
Um, Probably by educating them the difference between sort of reactivity and allergies, because they are different. Um, and I would honestly say I would start with food, um, homeopathic remedies, and dealing with the gut. That was sort of like my triad of the starting point with anything that with serious chronic disease or even preventative medicine. I did see lots and lots of cats. My vet hospital was the primary clinic for Vancouver Orphan Kitten Rescue, which rescued over 2,000 cats a year. And we saw lots and lots of different things, from people rehoming cats because of allergies or because of inflammatory bowel disease, which can also look like allergies and can be caused by allergies. So, when we think of kitties and allergies, they look different than dogs, right? So, with dogs, they're usually very much just, gut stuff and really scratching and things like that. When with cats, it can manifest into all kinds of things, like as feline asthma, inflammatory bowel disease, um, obsessive compulsive grooming, um, flea allergy, dermatitis. There's a billion different things that can cats can go into, right? So when it comes to allergies, but they're not always allergies, they can be reactivities, and usually reactivity specifically comes from the gut. So when an animal has dysbiosis, or when an animal has specifically gut trauma to the mucosal lining, or some people call it leaky gut, or we just call it, like, not tight junctions, or loose junctions of the mucosal lining of the gut. What happens is that the gut is very much about, it does everything, right? It breaks down the food, it turns macronutrients into micronutrients, it detoxifies chemicals, drugs, environmental pollutants. It does a million different things. So if that junction is not tight, like a sieve, like very tight, so that just tiny things can go through, it starts to leak through things that should be passive and not reactive. So chicken protein, let's just say, shouldn't be something that a body reacts to. It shouldn't be like, oh my God, there's chicken protein, my life is ending, and send out the immune system and the soldiers need to kill it and all of that stuff. But it does if it goes into the bloodstream in a macular sense, because the body looks at it like, this shouldn't be in the bloodstream, this must be an enemy, this must be a virus, this must be, blah, blah, blah. So it sets up this overactive immune response that can look exactly like an allergy, and even semi-test like an allergy. So for me, yes, it's important to know what an animal is allergic to by doing like a saliva test or a really, really, really good blood test. But at the end of the day, they're kind of worked with it in the same way from my perspective. And that is, if something has a true allergy, it means that the body on some way, shape, or form has been unbalanced, because we shouldn't be getting allergic to things, especially things that we eat, right? Like it's not a really a natural process. It's a natural process to reject something that's poisonous, so that we stay alive. But it's not natural for an animal to be allergic to grass, to be allergic to its food, that kind of thing. That's saying that there's something wrong with the immune system. So whether we want to classify as an allergy or a reactivity, it truly doesn't matter from that perspective, because it's saying the same thing. So how I address that is that when we think of an allergy, or even when we think of a reactivity, or we look at the symptomatic response of either, they look very often the same. Like I said, explosive diarrhea, vomiting, problems breathing, itching, ... leaky eyes,
like licking,
over grooming,
yeah.
hyperesthesia, the list goes on and on. So how that's addressed normally in medicine is by giving an immune suppressive drug. So whether it's asthma or not, or whether it's an allergy or not, we give the body something that tells the immune system to shut down, basically, or slow way down, or push it down because it's too high. So understanding that piece is really important for pet parents, because there's actually something you can do. Like with that information, using immune suppressive drugs can be very helpful if an animal is in dire stress, which they often are when it comes to allergies or reactivities. But it's not a long-term fix, and it's really, really, really hard on the body. It's hard on the liver, it's hard on the kidneys, it's hard on the gut. So it's not an ideal curative solution, or it's not an ideal solution long-term. So I caution people to, like, when I definitely don't have an opinion about giving it, because I'm all about taking an animal out of suffering. But you don't just take it out of suffering and go, okay, we're done here, we're fixed, because now they're not itching or they don't have explosive diarrhea, because it's still there. It's just brewing underneath. That's this thing that's pushing it down. And then what's going to happen is the animal's not going to be able to stay on it, specifically cats. Cats do not do well on steroids. They can get steroid-induced diabetes. Cats are very sensitive to steroids. So they eventually have to come off of it. And when that happens, or even if they don't, but if the body eventually gets used to this suppressive process, it just overreacts even more. It's called a rebound effect. So you're pushing down, you take it off, even if you're weaning it off, and it goes like that, right? Until it goes back up here. So it's a really hardcore merry-go-round. But the bright side of that is there are so many things that we can do to modulate the immune system naturally. And for those of you out there that have hit a wall and had to put your cats on drugs, don't get freaked out. You just need to be sure that you're working with your veterinarian, that you're putting in this immune modulation effect at the same time as you're weaning them off the drug, right? And you're putting in the right supplements, and you're putting in the right, diets, right? Like all the supportive pieces. And it's amazing if you do it that way, rather than, like, I'm just going to say this because it's a lot of people don't understand this, but you don't have to wean them off the way the vets do. But when I say that, people think, oh, I'll just take them off. That's the worst thing to do, because that is when you really get a rebound. But if you can talk to your vet about making the weaning process slower, even, and I call something like micro dosing, which means that you every time you wean them, you're taking them off of a little bit more of the drug and a little bit more of the drug and a little bit more of the drug until at the end they're on all these supportive treatments and these supportive things, but they're still on a very small amount. At the same time, you're doing them together rather than, like profound differences of both. It's the key to the success of working with allergies when animals have been on suppressive drugs. In my opinion, I have found the most success doing it that way, and I help other veterinarians, or I help veterinarians do it. And I've worked with lots of other clinics in speaking to the concept of that. And especially I feel because animals are spayed and neutered, so they don't have sex hormones. So the small amount of this, if you want to use Vanactyl P, or you want to use like prednisone or something like that as an example, or prednisolone, depending on what they're using, and that's not the greatest for cats anyways, but it's almost like it becomes like a hormone supplement or support because you're on so much. So what immune modulation means, and this is what you need to speak to your veterinarian about, from a very, heartfelt place where it's a really positive discussion, is that immune modulation is very different. Because if you say, I want to support or strengthen the immune system, that actually is not what you want. Because then you're doing the polar opposite of what they're trying to do, and it's bumping heads. So you don't want to do things like echinacea and things that we know that stimulate the immune system. We want to do immune modulation. Most of the immune modulating effects come from the gut. So the thing of looking at reactivity or allergies is, for me, start with making sure the gut is really, really healthy from a perspective of the lining of the gut and the diversity of the bacteria. Make sure that we're giving them whole foods, right? Like even if it's a home cooked diet or a purchased cooked diet, if you can't get your head around raw, or a raw diet. And then, there's homeopathic remedies that are really helpful in that case, like aconite and nux vomica and arnica, things like that. But I think that the thing about when you're working with an animal that has an allergy or a reactivity, the goal is that they can have a normal life after, right? That they don't have to be removed and taken away from everything. So, but it's very helpful to know what is reactive, because you want to get the body to calm down. So if you do a test and you know that your cat is allergic to chicken and allergic to like grasses or a certain pollen or a type of synthetic material or whatever, then we want to try to remove that from their environment just to give the animal a break, right? While we're doing everything. And I think an important part of that is really environmental, looking at anything that isn't showing that they're allergic to, but may in fact be heightening their immune modulating or their overreactive immune system. Febreze, okay? Febreze, fabric softeners, shampoos, conditioners, creams that people put on their own body.
Plug-in air fresheners.
Plug-in air fresheners, like I said, cleaning floor products, synthetic materials on your couch, on your cat beds. So one of the main things I tell people all the time is get cotton until your animals are and until you can really figure out what you're going to do, because it's not good for you to be sleeping on that stuff either. Right. So until you can figure out, just go and buy a bunch of organic cotton sheets or a bunch of organic bamboo sheets that breathe, and cover everything that you can that you think is synthetic. Because what happens is as they're itching and as they're lying down, their body is shedding the bacteria from their skin, right? When the bacteria lands on something synthetic, it starts to create pathogenic bacteria because it has no breathing ability. So it's the anaerobic perspective comes into play. When it can breathe, then often what actually happens is the positive aspect of it, which then it starts to be able to almost support the bacteria in a healthy way. So, simple things like that make massive differences, like a massive difference.
Yes.
And you know, like I said, healing the gut, using remedies, finding real food rather than processed food, their environment and stress. Stress can really play a big part because they're so stressed when they're itching that even the smallest amount of stress in their environment is tenfold. It's like us. If we're not
Yes.
feeling good and then a stressful situation comes up, it's 1,000 times harder to deal with than if you're feeling well. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of things with allergies that get overlooked, and it's the obstacle of them curing, because it's, it could just be the missing piece. Or when you're putting everything together, it's a lot easier to control their environment from that perspective than go, how do I do this? Like, how do I get them to not be allergic to this? And how to, like, sometimes you're so overwhelmed with that. But eventually, when their bodies become less, when you're focusing on the overactivity, then eventually they shouldn't be overactive to so many things, because
Right.
you're trying to address the core issue of why it's happening.
Yes.
And it's a scary process, but it doesn't have to be as scary as it's been made out to believe. And I think one of the frustrating parts is that people take their animals to the vet, they get a drug, they get an injection, they seem great, and then when they don't seem great anymore, they're worse. It becomes this really hard pattern of living for the animal and for its pet parent to watch that suffering, right?
Yes. Yeah. So a couple things that you've said that I wanted to talk about, and something that you said in a video, and I don't remember which one it was, that like really helped me. So Charlie, my cat, was the one that had all the reactivity with the sensitivities and whatnot. And he ended up, I this all like came to fruition after I had just finished like 6 months of care with the CKD cat, a chronic kidney failure cat. And so I didn't want to put drugs in him. I didn't want to do any of that because I knew what that could potentially cause. And so my veterinarian kept trying, and then ultimately she was like, Jenny, let's try, prednisolone and see how it goes. And I had such a bad thought of it in my head. Such a, like, I just didn't want to give it to my cat. And looking back on it, I don't really know why, but it was something that you said in one of the videos about, and both of my cats are desexed. So you said that a little bit can be okay. And I was like, okay, well, if Julie Lee says that, then I'm going to try it. And it saved us because I slept, he slept. It gave me an opportunity to be like regenerated, to like feel like I could be a good caregiver again and start tackling the root cause while he was comfortable and not acting like a crazy man. So thank you for that. But I wanted to share that because if someone else is in that position, and the same friend that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, her vet gave her prednisolone, and I said, have it on, she didn't want to fill the script. She didn't, she's worried about diabetes, like all the things.
Yeah.
And I said, just fill the script, have it on hand. And if worse comes to worse, then you can use it. So I appreciate that about you, that it's not all or nothing, and that it can be used as a tool on your way to recovery.
Yeah, the only time I don't like it, and I would use the word don't like it, is when people give it or someone prescribes it, and then that's it.
Right.
It's like, okay, we're doing this, but like, we really aren't addressing the underlying issue, and it's going to come back, and it's going to come back worse, right?
Yes. Yes.
Saying that, that's why I said about suffering. I'm a big one about how do we remove the suffering, because and then I get people saying to me, but everything suffers. You can't remove suffering. I get that. But my point is that there's also a physiological component with that, right? So when animals are suffering or people are suffering, or there's a lot of stress, the cortisol level goes up. The healing process in that stressful situation decreases exponentially, right? So yeah, no, I don't throw drugs at any of my animals or any of my patients at my clinic. That never ever happened. If we did, it was because we all stood back, like the whole team and the pet parents and family and whatever, and went, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do we feel this animal's life is? How do I actually feel its quality of life is right now? Because if its quality of life sucks, this is not okay to go, oh, let's just change his diet and let him detox and let him, like, that's bullshit to me. Sorry. I
Yeah.
really get upset with that, because it's like, you're not the one itching, or
Right.
this is not you that's happening, right? Like, we can't, they don't have free will. Right? We are their free will, kind of. So we have to put ourselves in that position. And, you raised a good point. Like, you get to a place where you're exhausted because you're not sleeping, then you're not making right decisions. Like, you're making reactive decisions instead of
Yes.
responding to what you really know. It's not bad. You just, it is, it's beneficial, and it works towards the long-term goal if given correctly, and
Yes.
not just haphazardly, like it doesn't hurt them, or that there's no side effects, or that here, oh, your cat has bang stamped with an allergy, so it's going to need an immune suppressive drug and this kind of diet for the rest of its life. That infuriates me, because that actually is not true ever. I've never, ever, ever seen that to be true.
Right.
If we really, really look at it, do they need tweaking? Do they need, but that it doesn't, and also I don't like the fact of what can happen in this sort of like black and white life of holistic versus conventional, is that the obsession of then making sure that we do everything correctly. We are losing, we not always, but if we can find a balance in it, then that doesn't happen. But if we can't, we remove a lot of the joy that we're doing with our animals. So instead of just hanging out and connecting and whatever, we're watching them and reading what other nutraceutical or supplements or probiotic or food, we become obsessed with figuring it out, that we are not fully present with our animal. So
Right.
sometimes the drug can give us that space to kind of just be, and then regroup and proceed.
Yes.
But it
Yes.
really depends on where your animal's at. I know a lot of animals that just start getting itchy or start to create a problem, and they're instantly put on that stuff.
Yes.
And it's like, oh my God, what? Like that? They didn't even suggest looking at this, or they didn't suggest looking at that. There's a workaround when it comes to like true integrative medicine, which is what my clinics were. They were really
Yes.
true integrative medicine, and every animal was an individual. I looked at every single animal that walked through the door as an individual case of what feels right for the pet parent. What's the pet parent going to, how's a pet parent going to handle this when she's got 16 children and has to go to soccer games every 5 seconds. Like, how's that even going to work? How is she going to make her own food? When she's not even feeding herself and she's trying to feed, like, like it really is about finding that balance that brings the most joy to both parties, the animal and the people.
Yes. Yes. I also wanted to touch on the fact that you said it's not fair, you're not the one itching. Because a lot of times I see in a lot of the Facebook groups I'm a part of that they just put a cone on the cat, if it's over grooming. And yes, same response that I think I can't imagine that feeling in my body and not being able to itch it. Like I would be, so yes, that's another thing that really bothers me about a kind of conventional solution to that problem.
Approach to it. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Like I think that we though have to own that as the caregivers, right? Of just allowing that, oh, well, the vets say it's okay, so then it must be.
Right.
That we need to own that, to go, okay, did I actually think about what that might feel like?
Yes.
Vet, no vet, whatever. Like, and that's what I always say to people: get strong with your philosophy and what feels true to you before you walk into a clinic.
Yes.
Once you walk into the clinic, the fear of God happens, and then you're all over the map. And then guilt happens, and then this happens, and then that happens, and it's just a big cluster, so I think that understanding the sort of physiology, we're all smart enough, everybody's smart enough to be like, okay, well, these are sort of the things that happen. Like I said, you don't have to know the nitty gritty technical terms of every cell and every system and everything, but all you really need to understand is that your animal's body has gone into a state of alert, and what we need to do is find out why it's imbalanced and bring it back to balance, right? To calm it down and bring it back to balance. So when you think about that, then that helps you go the questions. So if I give pred, is this going to cure am I going to be able to give this 3 months or 6 weeks or however long, or an injection and it lasts for a month? Is this going to cure my cat? Is this going to be the end of this? Well, no vets are going to be able to say yes, that's what's going to happen. So in that understanding, in the minute you hear that, then the important piece is going, okay, so it's going to give my animal some relief, but it's not going to cure it. So what do I need to do in order to address the root cause? And that just gives you some power and something to stand on.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, well then if it's up here, what are the tools to bring it down here, or to bring it down here and allow it to go up and then come down and up and come down, because that's what it's supposed to do. Immune modulation, things like turkey tail, larch, certain species oriented probiotics like our Felix flora. One of the main things that we saw in our study is that it create the postbiotic effect of those bacteria produces an immune modulation anti-inflammatory effect, right? So it triggers the body to go up when there's viruses and bacteria, and it tells it to go back down when there's nothing that is creating that response of needing to attack something, right? It could just chill out. Educating the gut flora to know when to react and when to not react.
Yes.
Right? It needs to have that intellectualization that, oh, that's just a this, so I don't have to react to that, or telling the brain it doesn't need to do this, or telling the rest of the organs what it needs to do and what it doesn't need to do. Without that conductor in the gut, not a lot of things are going to be in balance, right? And I think that you know, when you know what that word immune modulation means, then you can look for it, right? If you don't know what immune modulation means, how do you try to find things that are immune modulating? You know, it's that understanding. A lot of people don't understand immune modulation until I started talking about it, you know, a few years ago, where you know, you hear from your vet, we have to do an immune suppressive drug, or we have to do this drug because it, you know, your body, your cat's body is in an overreactive state. Sometimes they don't even tell you that. They just say your cat has an allergy, it needs a steroid. They don't even explain what a steroid's doing. So it's just like educating yourself on what does it mean so that you can understand it from a very basic level, right? Then when you have that basic level, you can go, oh, well, the dots start to connect. You know, you don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be a vet. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a scholar. You don't have to be anything. You just can connect the dots, right? If you think that something's too high, it's pretty basic. We have to bring it down.
Yes.
And we don't want it down in the gutter. We want to hear. We want to balance it. Looking at balancing is probably one of the number one supportive word that you can have when you're addressing your animal's health or your family's health. It doesn't matter. You know, you don't want anything too much or too little. You know,
Right.
kind of how I formulate. I don't like formulating something that's like a big gun, right? I don't believe in big guns. You know, not very often. The odd time, for sure, we have to use big guns. But in general, using the right formulations and the right synergistic ingredients together in low amounts. The idea is it's bringing the body back to balance, not
Yes.
blowing it out of the water.
Right.
Because you don't want, that's not really that's not really what homeostasis or, you know, health is about.
Right. Okay, so let's say that there's somebody that's listening to this that has a veterinarian that doesn't know how to do any of this, and they want to approach it on their own.
Mhm.
You mentioned blood test, mentioned cotton.
Saliva test.
Yes.
Mhm.
So would those be your first two steps? Replace everything in the home that's synthetic and also do the blood or saliva test?
Yeah, and start by, I mean, we have so many blogs about
Yes, and
allergies
I
and
want to
things
link
like
to
that.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll link, you should link to those, or you could link to those. But I also have something on YouTube called Are You Vet Ready?
Yes.
It's a
I've
it's a it's a little bit of a course about
it's
how do you work with your vet? You know, how
yes,
do you,
it's a series of three. I think
it
I
is.
watched it. Yeah.
It is. And how do you, you know, how do you keep that rapport and that the ability to communicate and stuff? But the cool thing about the saliva test is you can do it at home, and it goes
Yes.
through a company called Gene Dodds,
Yes. Nutriscan.
Nutriscans. Yep.
Yes.
So you don't even have to really talk to your vet about it. You can just, you know, do it yourself and read what she's got there. But, you know, just, you know, look, and if your animal has been diagnosed with a reactivity or an allergy, look for things that support immune modulation. So like our Felix Flora, Gut Soothe does too, because it's got larch, and larch is an immune modulation. Turkey tail modulates the immune system. There's lots of things out there that have immune modulation in them. Cover everything you possibly can. Stop using any hormonal products that have hormone disruptors, like plug-in things, Febreze, certain cleaners, that kind of stuff. You know, they do work. Those Dyson air purifier things for dust mites and things like that. Those are Dyson ones are really good, especially the pet one. That's good. Decreasing stress in the household. If it's really stressing you out, you know, do some meditation. You know, it's funny how much cats love meditation. Like you put on a meditation music or something, my cats are like right there. And you know, like self-care for yourself, because then you can make core decisions based on feeling balanced yourself rather than in
Yes.
reactive fear place.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and not doing too much at once so that you don't know what's working and what's not working.
Yes.
And that's you know, another really good one is our go-to. We have a homeopathic remedy called Your Go-To, and it can really help with the pain and the inflammation and the stress that comes along with itching all the time. I find it works really well with cats. Works well with dogs too, but cats really do well on go-to. And a big one is keep a journal. That's a big one. Okay, October, whatever, started by buying bamboo, blah, blah, right?
Yes. Yes.
And, you know, the next day, oh, interesting, he's maybe itching a little less, or there's a little less diarrhea, or maybe his breathing's a little bit better, or, you know, day 5, introduced Felix Flora or introduced Gut Soothe, you know, and really keep a track. Oh, day 5, the kids are home right after school and they bring all their friends. That night, my cat's worse, right? Or that night, my cat's better. Like really connecting the dots, because it's incredible. Because let's say that does happen. People have said that to me. Well, what's that going to do? Like, I'm not going to tell my kids not to come home from school, or, you know, they have to be able to have a life and bring their friends. It's like, yeah, but then give your cat at 2:00. If your kids are coming home, or, you know, if they're coming home at 3:00, at 11, give it a dose of go-to. At, you know, 2:30, give it another dose of go-to, so that it's prepared for the chaos. Don't let everybody maul it. Give it
Yes.
safe space to
Yes.
be able to get it. It really is about putting your animal in putting yourself in your animal's situation, that and then tweaking it for that species,
Yes.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, cats like to hide, right? Give it a hiding space. Clear
Yes.
boundaries with the kids. Don't touch the cat.
Yes.
You know, like you can't go, I love my cat, I love my cat, I love my cat, but I'm gonna let all these kids maul my cat because I don't want them to be upset that they can't maul my cat. You can't maul my cat. You can't maul the cat. You know,
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
super like, you know, your animals to me are your family. So what you
Yes.
afford your children from a perspective of what's best for them, you have to afford your animals.
Right. And know your cat, because I have 2 cats, one that would love to be mauled by children and the other that would not like it at all. But the
Mm.
one that would like to be mauled by children is my allergy cat. So then I think I worked with Sarah Griffiths for a while, and one of the things that the like best advice she ever gave me when I was just in that nightmare state of like flight or fright in my body all the time is she said, you know, go above, pretend like you're in an airplane and you're looking down on the situation. So so with Charlie, you know, if they I don't have kids, but if I had kids and they had friends that come over and he wanted to play and all that kind of stuff, I would wonder what laundry detergent they had on their clothes. That's what Charlie would react to, not the interaction. He'd
Yeah.
love that, but so there's other, I mean, you have to think of so many things, which is also sort of maddening. But there are other reasons sometimes, and it's not so obvious as well.
Totally. And the only thing that makes it obvious is when you chart it,
Journal, yeah, I
journal it,
agree.
right?
Yeah,
And because then you could be like, okay, well, I know he loves attention. So it can't be the
yes,
attention, but something
yes,
clearly is happening every time these children come over,
right,
right?
yes,
So,
yes,
you know, are you the crazy mom that, you know, buys size 7 flannel shirts for 6 kids and you throw flannel shirts on them when they come in, and you're the crazy flannel shirt mom? Like, I don't know. Or
yes,
you say, I know you love getting mauled, but you know what? It's not worth what happens to you after. So you have to
right,
come in and hang out in the bedroom for
right,
this period of time, right? Like,
yes,
there's always, there really is usually always solutions. And even if that solution is remove them from the situation, then you remove them from the situation, but not forever. As they're getting better, right? And they're in a place that they're not going to itch and literally have, like, from here to here no fur and skin, you know, like that is not worth that's not worth that, right? So when they're getting better, then okay, so let's try now, see what they do. If they react,
Yes.
then you know that they're still not in that space,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know. And okay, the days that the kids come over and the cat has to be separated, that night we have movie night. We try to have movie night, make sure that we're all like really interacting with the cat because it's been locked up for 4 hours or 3 hours or whatever.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and give it something for the stress, give it something like go to or whatever. But
Yes.
homeopathic remedies, I really haven't touched on that. Homeopathy for cats and allergies is just really, really, really good. It's
Really good.
really good. Yeah.
Yes.
Working with
Yes.
the homeopath. Um, Don Hamilton and Richard Pitcairn have good books on homeopathy and small animals. Just trying different remedies with them. But at the same time, you're doing all of this other stuff and you're putting things in place and I think the big thing is that how long have they had it? Don't
Hmm.
expect it to happen overnight and don't let them suffer while you're fixing it.
Right. Yes. Agreed. When you started talking about having hair removed, it reminded me of whenever Charlie had feline hyperesthesia. I say he's in remission. I don't know what the um, proper terminology is there, but a lot of times one of the first things is I believe his kind of gets it can get worse with flea allergy dermatitis, which he's very reactive to that. And it seems like the first thing that's suggested if they have a lot of hair loss or whatever is, oh, put a topical flea med on it. It must be a flea allergy because, as you know, one flea bite can cause a whole reaction, and you can't find a flea on them. So, can
I
you
know.
talk about how flea allergy dermatitis comes into play a little
Yeah,
bit,
well,
please?
it flea allergy dermatitis is usually really an allergy. So they have for somehow way, shape, or form, something's been unbalanced, and then they have, saved that flea saliva as um a reactive allergic response, right? So when it comes to that, again, it's all about how much are they suffering. So you and I are going to do another podcast on flea prevention and what we can do. And we have to do that, but there is actually Grindella, which is a homeopathic remedy made from flea saliva, right? That you can give cats with flea allergy dermatitis.
I can't tell you how badly I like want to run out of the room and go get that. Okay.
Okay, so you probably have to order it. I don't know
Yes.
whether, if you're in the US, homeopathy overnight, they may have it. Andrea Ring can get it for you. Sarah Griffith can get it for you. Probably any veterinarian that's homeopathic that has an account with a licensed homeopathic pharmacopoeia can get it. Some of that can help. Like if it's still there, which often it is, right? It's like you said, it's in remission, or it's just you've got them in balance. Starting with that before they're really bad can be very helpful. And then it's that whole thing of how bad are they right now? Do
Yes.
I actually know that there's fleas in my house? Even though I can't find one on them, we've found a flea bite or something. So you do actually know that it is in fact fleas that's happening. And until you get your house in shape, you kind of have to sometimes bite the bullet and do the topical, but make sure that topical is one that is extra safe. So I would be purchasing that topical from a holistic veterinarian that does their due diligence to be sure that the topical that they're using is the safest one. Don't just go to the pet store and buy Zodiac, or don't just go and buy something that is so incredibly toxic, right? And then after, make sure before and after you're giving things like phosphorus, arnica, nux vomica, liver tonic, you're not just gonna, you're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and just give one dose of this stuff. But before I do, I am going to protect my cat's kidneys, livers, bowel, brain cells, neurological system. I am going to give them the, talk about the bomb. I am going to give them the bomb of homeopathic medicine and supportive liver, pancreas, gallbladder, and kidney herbal support to be sure that they don't have a negative reaction to this. So it's like my mom would say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't just go, I have to do it. So, oh my God, I'm just going to do it, And no, that's where we fall into like big trouble.
Yes.
So they're, like I said, I can always, if you ask Mariana, I can send you a list of remedies that we would use at our practice at my clinic if we had to do one of those treatments.
Yes,
right?
please.
I'll send you the protocol of like liver support and detoxification and all that, protecting the brain, like the whole 9 yards. You do it prior, during, and at least 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks after.
Okay. We have had 2 flea infestations in a year. And I was this close to giving a topical, but Charlie's had a head tremor from it. So, or from if he has the over histamine reaction or whatever, he gets a little bit of a head tremor. I don't really know, but anyway, it's
So you got that head tremor from the drug or from the reaction from the flea bites?
I don't know which one. He was on Revolution, but he was never detox. I never, because I didn't know about that kind of stuff when I was giving him that. And I found out from an animal communicator, it's raccoons that bring it into my yard. So he hasn't been outside since July. So he is cabin crazy right now. And I hate that he can't get out there and get grounded and all that kind of stuff. And so that gives me hope. But I'm so fearful and, which isn't bringing good energy, but the amount of work it takes vacuuming every day, washing everything all the time is so exhausting. And you do that twice in a year. Like we're not going outside until it's freezing. So that's good to know that there's a protocol.
Yeah. And when we do the flea one too, there are products out there that are for the yard.
Yes, and I've been treating my yard
that you can use. It's just, again, are they, fully safe to be using on your cats? I don't know, but they're probably better than the topicals, right?
Yes.
Like when you're looking at, you have to just be really careful with cedarwood and cats.
Yes.
Cedarwood can be really, like, they can either be fine or they can have like a massive reaction. I had a cat that just couldn't even get near it. So, yeah, I mean, we just do the best we can and do supportive measures. And if your cat had possibly that reaction, then you can ask your vet, do they have one that is, like, some of them are pesticides, some of them are insecticides, like which one doesn't have the neuro,
yes,
the neuro component to it.
Yes,
that has the least amount of neuro component to it. If you ever have absolutely had to do it again,
yes,
be prepared, use a different one, and make sure that you're preparing them before, during, and after.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, again, there's more things that we can work on, you can work on with Sarah and things like that. There's an amazing homeopathic remedy called histaminum that really helps with histamine response.
Okay.
Right? It's a phenomenal remedy. And things that really help histamine is supporting the liver, right? Because the liver is the one that actually regulates that piece.
Yes. Okay.
There's so much you can do. It's and try, I think, for people, try really hard not to get overwhelmed by it all, because if you're using a if you're using something like a notepad or a book, if you see something's working, don't use it. Not working, don't use it anymore. Don't just keep adding,
Right,
to
right.
the pot. If it's
Yes.
clearly not working, then say, okay, if this isn't working for my animal, or for this, and
Yes.
then try something else. But using gut soothe, which you're using, is probably really helping with that because it's healing his mucosal lining, so he's not
Yes.
reactive, right?
Right.
But on top of that, maybe looking at Grindella and looking at histaminum and lots of liver tonic and things like that would be helpful.
Okay. That's great. Julie, where were you in June? I needed this information in June before we got this problem in July. Um, so I'm excited about talking to you about fleas because yes, I mean, I've spent so much time, but Grindella, didn't know about it. And I
Yeah,
will,
ask Sarah or Andrea, or see if you can get it on homeopathy overnight.
okay.
Liver
Well,
tonic. Liver tonic's massive for flea allergy with dermatitis.
okay.
Keep the
And
histamine response balanced.
okay, and we have it. So I will use it.
Yeah.
There are only a few Adored Beast products that I don't have. I actually am going to try Wolf next. Is it called Wolf? Or is it
Wolf.
called? Okay. Yeah, that's a friend of mine, a different friend of mine, has her 3 rag dolls on it, and they're doing great on it.
Yeah,
So,
like people think, oh, because it's a species from the wolf, you can't give it to a cat. That's like
yes.
saying I can't give any probiotics because they're made from a cow or they're made from soil, or we're not soil, right? It
Right.
doesn't matter. Bacteria is bacteria.
Yes.
And the more diverse, the better.
Yes. Yes.
The only time we have things that aren't for cats or are just specifically for cats, we'll put on the label, like do not use for, like our yeasty beast, we don't recommend for cats because of the podarco in it.
Mm,
Can be not so great for cats. So think like we definitely have it on the label that, this is a dog specific or this is a cat specific. Other than that, they can all be given together. And the reason that feline gut soothe is different than canine is because there's no aloe in the feline one where there is in the canine one. And the feline one has a glandular so that it tastes better.
okay. Why isn't the aloe in it? I didn't know that about the aloe.
Yeah, aloe can be toxic for cats, some cats.
Oh.
Mm.
Oh, okay.
Ingested aloe.
Okay. Interesting. Unfortunately, I have to run
Yes, I
because
know
my
that.
cats have to get their blood taken. I can't tell you, like, while you're talking and stuff, I'm like, she's like on here with me. Like, this is crazy. I still, you were such a lifesaver to me. I know you don't know that other than the last time we talked, but literally, and I want to say this for other people to know that when I did laundry, when I did dishes, I listened to all of your Ask Julie Anythings, and those are so helpful. So please keep doing them because you helped me incredibly, and it got me through that time. And so I just adore you for that. So thank you, and thank you for being here and doing this.
Well, thank you for having me and spreading the word, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? Is
Yes.
as many animals as we can possibly help, and trying to give hope where sometimes people think there isn't any, and that's when they give
Yes. Yes,
up.
exactly.
you know
There's always hope.
Mhm.
Unless it's the end, and then
And then
that's
yeah, but
yeah.
it's like you, when I always talk about like just get in the knowing. You don't even
Yes.
know when it's not. Like, it's not about how long they're living, it's about their quality of life. I always talk about quality of life.
Yes.
How can we increase their quality of life? How can we increase their quality of life? And if you can't, and you've tried everything and you're at that place and you can't do it, then you can't do it.
Right.
It's that's a whole another different discussion. I was,
Yes.
before I get off, I'm a really good friend of mine. Her name is Dr. Isla Fishburne. I just did a book review. She wrote a book, and it's about dogs, but I think it really translates into any kind of animal. But that's why I was saying, like, that's another discussion, like euthanasia and end stage life and things like that, cancer stuff. That's a different podcast. But
Yeah.
she wrote this book, and it's just amazing. Like it's just amazing about the connection of dogs and people. But you know, I kind of translate that all the time with all animals, because I know people that have the most amazing connections with, you know, a ferret. You know, when I worked in the downtown east side, I treated a lot of you know, homeless shelter animals in their families that, you know, their ferrets were their life, and their bond with their ferrets were something so incredible, like you just wouldn't even believe it. So I feel like that translation can happen spiritually through any kind of animal.
Yes, I
But
agree.
it might be a podcast. It might actually be something that we should talk about at some point.
Yes.
Is that piece.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely. And so I'm going to link to all of that too, because in your Vet Ready series, I think your last one talks about euthanasia, and that was huge for me as well. And it was one of the, I mean, I've always wanted my cats on raw, but it was the turning point for me that I was like, oh, it's easier to know when you need to do euthanasia if your cats have like a whole food diet and they're not on all these meds and all. Okay. So yes,
Yeah,
that was,
it makes it a lot less cloudy,
yes.
you know, like
Yeah.
taking the layers off, you know, and knowing that, okay, well, we've done this and we've done that, and this is happening and that's happening. It's 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 nice to be able to have a clear direction that
Yes.
they can speak to you, and it's them speaking and not a drug symptom speaking,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just knowing the difference.
Right.
So, okay,
Thank you. Thank
go to
you.
your appointment.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
you're very
Bye.
welcome. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.